Besides JavaScript files, I also want to support CSS files. So I will install a separate loader, as it's called. We had Babel loader for JavaScript. I'll install a separate loader for styles, for CSS, or actually two loaders. With npm install -- save dev, I'll install the style loader and the CSS loader. These are two extra packages that help us deal with CSS. One basically will analyze CSS imports, the CSS loader, and the other, the style loader, will then take all the CSS code it finds, which is generated by the CSS loader, for example, and inject it into an HTML page. For that, let's go back to the webpack config file and let's simply add another rule. Now we want to test for CSS files, so ending with .css. These are the files we want to now take care of. I also want to exclude anything that lives in node modules. And then here, we don't have a single loader, but multiple loaders, which we can add by using the use property here, which takes an array of loaders, where every loader is represented by an object, where you have a loader key. Now there we have the style loader, which is added just like this. And as a second loader, we have the CSS loader. Now the CSS loader is responsible for understanding our CSS imports. The style loader is responsible for then injecting the CSS code into our HTML file, you could say. Now the CSS loader needs additional configuration to support CSS modules. So for that here, I will add an options key, which is another JavaScript object, where for one I add import loaders 1, and then a modules property. Now, unlike earlier in the course, we don't just add it like this, we don't just set it to true, but in newer versions of the CSS loader, this actually is an object itself, where you then add this local ident name, which you previously added as a separate option, as a nested option on this modules option. And then here, this is something you saw earlier in the course, where we defined basically how these unique class names should be generated for my CSS modules. And here, I'll use the same config as I used throughout the entire course. Now, this enables CSS modules, and it helps us with CSS in general. Now, there's one third loader which I want to add, so I'll install it with -- save dev, and that's the post CSS loader. I will also add this to the config file after the other two CSS loaders. So here the loader is post CSS loader. This loader will help us with processing our CSS code such that it automatically prefixes it, for example, so that it automatically transforms our CSS code to work in older browsers as well. For that, here we can add an options key where we set ident to post CSS and then add a plugins option, which is actually a function that has to return an array. And in that array, I want to execute the plugins I want to run over my CSS code. And that's another plugin we have to install with npm install -- save dev. That's the auto prefixer plugin. Auto prefixer can now be imported up there. Const auto prefixer require auto prefixer, just like this. And it's executed as a function in this plugins array, like that. Now our CSS code will always be auto prefixed. For that, we need to tweak the package.json file, and in there, add a browser's list option that might sound familiar to you. I mentioned the term browser's list when we worked on Babel. Well, we'll actually copy this browser definition and add this as an entry here. Like that. This will be picked up by auto prefixer. Whoops, like this actually. This will be picked up by auto prefixer, and it will tell this auto prefixer package how to prefix our CSS properties. So which browsers we actually want to support. And with that, we now added everything we need to add to also handle CSS files. Now, we're still not entirely done though, because we don't just have CSS files either. If we have a closer look, we're also working with images, which I'm importing from an image file like this. Obviously, this should also be supported.